Madam, you may start now.
It's not enough to be busy. The question is what we are busy about. Good evening all and welcome to our 20th VCM on the topic that is need of the hour. As said by Sri Narendra Modi ji, good governance is not firefighting or crisis management. Instead of opting for ad hoc solutions, the need of the hour is to tackle the root cause of the problems. So to update ourselves and efficiently perform the audit functions and to get well equipped with the recent changes and clauses amended, so far, we have with us very renowned and known speaker, C. Vyomesh ji. Welcome, sir, and good evening. Before we begin with this interesting session, I request our coordinator, C. Mayur Kothari ji, to please give a formal introduction of us, sir. Mayur ji?
1 minute. Yeah. Now it is audible?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Sheetal madam, for giving me to introduce our today's speaker, Bhumesh Pathak ji. He has been in. He has a 12 years of experience in the corporate tax advisory. He has been regular contributor to the WIR referencer from 2016-17. He currently is a committee member of International Tax Committee of WIRC ICI. He has been committee member to the various chambers, various councils like Chamber of Tax Consultants, what you call as Direct Tax Community, Research and Publication Committee, Study Circle and Study Group committees. He's been regular speaker with regular speaker with various study circle and various study groups. He is also a social worker and also a professional tarot card reader and numerology consultant. I request Sheetal madam to continue with the today's session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayuji, for the introduction. I request our speaker, sir, to please begin with this interesting session.
Okay. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, so is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sheetal madam, Deputy Convener, Convener Ritu madam, past Convener Nikunj bhai, and of course my dear friend in absentia Amit Agarwal, RCM of Sai Virar branch, MCM rather. I think it has been a ritual for me to present at Bhinder CP Study Circle each year. I think last year also it was somewhere in the month of September or October, I don't remember. Same topic, of course, tax audit. So this year again we are meeting a bit early, earlier the better. So the topic for today's discussion, as you all are aware, is recent amendments, recent developments in tax audit report. So let us directly dwell into the topic before or without wasting much of the time. So we begin with basically the basics. Now, to begin with the applicability of tax audit, we break it up into two, business and profession. As far as business is concerned, again, we have sub-broken it into two parts. That is, for those assessees to whom 44AD is applicable, that is presumptive taxation. And for those assessees to whom presumptive taxation is not applicable. Then we have profession, again, presumptive taxation applicable 44ADA and non-44ADA cases. So now, let us look at the applicability till AY 1920, and then later on from last year onwards, the limits have been increased, and even this year the limits have been further increased. So if we look at earlier, or the normal limit, let us say in that manner, the normal limit is 1 crore rupees for other than 44AD. For 44AD cases, the limit is basically 2 crores is the limit for applicability of 44AD. And if your profit which you are offering is less than 8% or 6%, only in those cases the tax audit is applicable. as far as the 44 AD cases are concerned. 44 ADA, that is professionals other than 44 ADA, presumptive taxation not applicable. There the limit is 50 lakhs. And for other, that is for assessees to whom 44 ADA is applicable, the limit is if your profit is offered which is below 50 lakhs or 50% rather. So one important aspect here is that the normal limit still remains 1 crore and the limit for 44 AD is 2 crores. So if you are between 1 crore to 2 crore and 44 AD is applicable to you, in that case tax audit will not be applicable if you are opting for 44 AD. If you are not opting for 44 AD, then tax audit will be applicable to you. Now, last year there has been an amendment wherein the limit was increased from 1 crore to 5 crores. Now this year again the limit has been increased from 5 crores to 10 crores. So therefore 10 crore limit will be replaced, will replace 1 crore limit, provided your gross receipts and gross payments both are less than 5% in cash. So effectively assuming my total receipts is say 1 crore, then out of which 5% उसमें से minus कर दो, that is 95 lakhs has to be in through normal banking channels. If I have this condition covered, then the limit is 10 crores and not 1 crore. Both receipt as well as payment. So both the sides it covers receipt as well as total payments. Rest other limits remain the same. The only increase is for other than 44 AD cases wherein the limit has been enhanced to 10 crores. Now moving on, forms, as we all know, just to refresh, two forms, relevant forms, while there are other forms also, but two relevant forms are form 3CA and 3CB. 3CA is for the corporate assessees whose accounts are being required to be audited under any other law. Normally, जिन companies का company law में audit होता है, for them the relevant form is form number 3CA. Form number 3CB is for non-corporate assessees as well as for assessees whose financial year is other than 31st March. अगर December calendar year follow करते हैं तो उनके लिए भी form number 3CB होगा and not form 3CA. What happens if I don't get the tax audit done? There is a penalty of 0.5% of the turnover and the maximum penalty can be 1,50,000. However, no penalty will be levied if there is a reasonable cause. Now, what do you mean by reasonable cause? Reasonable cause is not defined as such, but a few examples of reasonable cause can be natural calamity, fire, theft, non-availability of accounts due to seizure, death or physical ability of partner in charge, bona fide interpretation of turnover based on expert advice, etc. For chartered accountants also, there is a penalty for furnishing incorrect information in reports and certificates, which is up to 10,000 rupees. This is applicable, or penalty of 10,000, not up to 10,000, but flat penalty of 10,000. This is effective from 1st of April 2017. So therefore, अगर assessing officer को या commissioner appeals को लगता है that you have not reported in form number 3CD correctly, then he may levy a penalty on the chartered accountant also under section 271J. So therefore, it is very, very relevant and critical for us to, be vigilant enough and have proper documentation in place to safeguard our own interest. While we may do audit properly, but what happens or practical issue is that we lack maintaining documentation or audit trail. This is where the issue may arise and the penalty may get triggered. So therefore, it is very, very important to get the documents received from the client in your working papers and all the information received being documented properly. Now, let me tell you one thing. ICAI has come up with a questionnaire for all relevant clauses of the tax audit report. So you can use this questionnaire as base and ask the client to fill up this questionnaire, and this can be useful, and this can help you maintain your working papers, and this will substantially reduce your work in terms of finalizing the audit report and also filing the audit report, tax audit report in time. So I'm sure you might have access to the checklist. If anybody wants the checklist and they don't have the checklist, they can get in touch with me. I'll circulate it to you separately. Now, coming to the recent changes in the tax audit, I'm sure that most of you might be doing tax audit since many years. So therefore, there is no point in going through each and every clause one by one, because we have more than 45-50 clauses. So therefore, it is not practically possible to cover all the clauses in a limited time span of 2 hours. So what I am trying to do is I am trying to cover all the critical clauses, all the important clauses, and also the clauses where there are recent amendments, so that it will be easier for you to understand and thereby finalize the tax audit report. And of course, towards the end, we can have the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, if anybody wants to share any inputs, etc., we can do that to make it more interactive towards the end. So you might be aware that for corporate assessees, a new tax regime has been introduced. Even for individuals, the new tax regime has been introduced, that is the concessional tax regime. So as far as the corporate assessees are concerned, if you see, there was one section 115 BA which was introduced from assessment year 17-18, which was specifically for manufacturing companies for whom the tax rate was a discounted tax rate, which was 25%. For any other domestic companies, it was 25% based on turnover if the turnover is less than 400 crores, or 30% if the turnover is more than 400 crores. Surcharge was 7%, 12%, depending on my total income. If it is more than 1 crore, then 7%, more than 10 crores, then 12%. Cess is applicable all across at the rate of 4%. MAT was applicable at the rate of 15%. And now, if you look at the concessional tax regime, which is applicable from last year, you have an option for manufacturing companies to offer the tax at the rate of 15%, 15%, and for other assessees at the rate of 22%. The only condition is that you won't be allowed any specific deductions either under Chapter 6A or accelerated depreciation, etc. That is the condition to apply this discounted tax rate or the concessional tax rate. Another important aspect is that MAT also is not applicable to both these categories of assessees. So you are out of MAT also. So it is a welcome step which has been triggered last year. I have seen many corporates who have already moved to the new tax regime because as such there are no deductions left under Chapter 6A. ऐसा कुछ इतना बड़ा बचा नहीं है. In which ways most of the deductions are gone away or are done away with, except for few. So therefore, many assessees have already moved to 115 BAA and BAB for if they are into manufacturing. Of course, the restriction for the manufacturing is that the entity cannot be formed by restructuring or by use of old plant and machinery which are already being used. Now, in relation to this amendment, we have the amendment in the Form 3CD, 3 amendments, which is applicable from last year. The first one is that they have inserted clause 8A, where where they are asking that whether the assessee has opted for taxation under section 115 BA, BAA or BAB, as the case may be. Then, if you look at changes in clause 18CA and 18CB, that is for depreciation, wherein they have inserted an adjustment for WDV. So effectively, if you have assets on which additional depreciation was allowable or claimed earlier, but now due to the new regime, you are not able to claim that, then you have to make that adjustment. You have to make that adjustment in your WDV to that extent, and thereby adjust the WDV and increase it to that level. Next amendment is basically similar to this, which is for carry forward of losses, the details of brought forward of losses. Here also, for the same reason, if you have any losses or if you have any brought forward unabsorbed depreciation on account of the earlier allowances, that also you need to give adjustments here and thereby reduce the brought forward losses to that extent. आपको brought forward loss भी carry forward करने नहीं मिलेगा. So there is one question in the chat box, which is that what do you mean by manufacturing is services covered? The answer is services will not be covered. Manufacturing or production as such is not defined under the Act, but there are various judicial precedents wherein it has been held that when you talk about manufacturing, a new product needs to come into existence, which is known distinctively in the market. So therefore, services will not be covered, but only pure manufacturing and production will be covered.
Vyomesh bhai,
Nikun bhai.
Vyomesh bhai, software producing companies then would be under services, because earlier it was a dicey thing. They were covered under VAT also. So software is altogether a new code, new thing.
Yeah.
Will that be said?
Yeah. So as far as software is concerned, there is a Supreme Court ruling which has held that, I think TCS, which has held that software amounts to a development of software does amount to manufacture. So therefore, if you are into development of software, yes, arguably it can be covered in the definition of manufacture. But to my mind, I think the department has been litigating for software. They have been blowing hot and cold, both sides. At times they are saying that it is manufacturing, therefore VAT or VAT bhi laga dete, service tax bhi laga dete. But now I think there is a Supreme Court ruling to say that it amounts to manufacture. And so therefore, arguably, it should be covered into development of software, of course. It should be covered in the definition of manufacture.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming to other relevant clauses which are amended from last to last year, clause 13. This is on account of ICDS. Clause 13D, E, and F have been introduced. I'll cover this in the subsequent slides. Then manner of accepting and repayment of loans. This is clause 31, which we'll cover in the subsequent slides. So this is ICDS clause 13D, E, F. I'll again cover these in details towards the end of my presentation, because ICDS in itself is a different topic or a large topic. So what I'll do is towards the end, I'll cover the specifics of ICDS, the applicability of ICDS, and brief background of ICDS for each ICDS, and also cover the disclosures. I have given the specimen of disclosures which you can take help of, and you can consider it as a sample, and you can of course update it for your respective clients. Now, if you look at clause 13D, it talks about whether any adjustment is required to be made to profit or loss for complying with the provisions of ICDS. If answer to D is yes, then you have to report the quantitative impact in clause number E. That is, you have to quantify the ICDS impact in clause number E. Now, irrespective of whatever you answer in D or E, even if your D and E might be not applicable, clause F cannot be not applicable. You have to give disclosures in clause F, because ICDS is applicable to all assessees who are following mercantile system of accounting. So therefore, in a tax audit report, clause 13F can never and never be not applicable. I have covered this in detail in my subsequent slides, so I'll come back to this again. Next amendment is in relation to 269SS, that is manner of payment. Now here, if you are taking any loan or advance under section 269SS, the law says that that has to be through account pay check or bank draft or ECS, that is electronic clearing system, that is normal banking channels. Now, clause 31A was already there. It required an exceptional reporting, that is, if the loan or advance or deposit is accepted otherwise than by way of account pay check or bank draft. This was the reporting which was required. Now they have changed this reporting. Just a second. Regarding sorry. So the point here is there was an exceptional reporting earlier, but now what they are requiring the tax auditor to report is an affirmation that the loan or advance which is taken is by way of bank draft or check or ECS, and if it is through bank or draft, whether it is through account pay, bank or draft. So अगर आप देख के बोलोगे प्राइमा फेसी ठीक है, उसमें क्या डिफरेंस है, राइट? सेम ही तो रिपोर्टिंग हुआ, पहले सिर्फ नेगेटिव रिपोर्टिंग होता था कि एक्सेप्शनल केसेस में रिपोर्टिंग होता था, बट इफ यू लुक एट द डिफरेंस रियली इज दैट नाउ द ऑडिटर is required to give an affirmation or a confirmation that there is a loan or advance which has been taken through check or bank draft, और वो check or bank draft account पे या cross check है, right? So therefore in a way indirectly your obligation increases because you are giving a confirmation in your audit report, right? पहले हम सिर्फ exceptional reporting करते थे, बट हम यहाँ पे यस अगर लिखते हैं, इट मीन्स यू हैव वेरीफाइड एंड यू आर कंफर्मिंग दैट द लोन और एडवांस इज टेकन बाय वे ऑफ अ नॉर्मल बैंकिंग चैनल. Similarly, there has been an amendment in section 269(ss) by virtue of Finance Act 2015, wherein in order to curb the black money or cash in the immovable properties transactions or in the real estate sector, the payment for real estate also is now included in 269(ss), and that also cannot be in cash. So therefore a corresponding amendment has been made in 3CD reporting, that is for clause 31B. There also you need to report that specified sum receivable in relation to transfer of immovable property. You have to report whether any loan or whether any deposit is made or any advance is made towards this, and again same thing, whether it is by way of account pay check or bank draft. Then if you look at clause 31C, which is for repayment, here also same thing, आपको पॉजिटिव अफर्मेशन देना है. पहले सिर्फ एक्सेप्शनल रिपोर्टिंग होता था कि अदर देन अकाउंट पे चेक है क्या, बट नाउ अगेन जैसा हमने 31A में देखा था, करस्पॉन्डिंग अमेंडमेंट इज आल्सो बीइंग मेड फॉर रीपेमेंट इन क्लॉज C. Also clause D, this is a new reporting requirement since last year कि रेसिपिएंट को भी यहाँ पे रिपोर्ट करना है इन फॉर रिसीट अंडर सेक्शन 269T. पहले सिर्फ बोरोवर रिपोर्ट करता था कि मैंने ये लोन रीपे कर दिया है, बट नाउ द रिपोर्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट इज आल्सो ऑन द लेंडर फॉर रिसीट ऑफ द लोन, दैट इज रीपेमेंट ऑफ लोन. जब भी लेंडर को मिलेगा वापस, तभी उसको भी रिपोर्ट करना है दैट वेदर the repayment is received otherwise than by a bank check or bank draft or ECS. And under clause E, in case the payment is received by check, bank draft, which is not an account pay check or account pay draft. So therefore यहाँ पे क्या होगा, lender भी reporting करेगा. So the purpose of this clause D is basically to look at or to have a cross referencing, just in case the borrower does not report. In that case the lender will report and automatically cross referencing हो जाएगा और borrower का भी reporting हो जाएगा. So therefore the tax authorities can catch hold of the borrower even if they don't report. Then coming to the recent tax audit report changes which are with effect from 20th of August, there were plethora of changes now which are applicable from 20th of August 2018. We'll go through each one of them one by one. So I have basketed these amendments into 4 buckets. सबसे पहला है connecting the dots, that is project insight. Then we have SAR, that is deemed dividend, gift tax, restriction on cash transaction, forfeiture of advance money, GAR, and last is transfer pricing. So first is connecting the dots, that is the digitization of income tax. Now, as you all are aware that the tax department is going digital. From many years, we have the e-filing going on. Then now we have faceless assessments, we have faceless appeals, we have faceless penalties. Everything is already up and running. Now, of course, keeping the current dilemma of the income tax website aside, apart from that, pehle se hi department has spent a lot, about USD 156 million, if I have to give you a number, for all this digitization. They have brought in all data mining, data warehousing, big data analysis, for maintaining or digitizing the records and also for cross-referencing. So if you see, the efficiency of tax authorities has increased big time in terms of getting non-filers, details of non-filers, widening of tax base, etc. So there is a big step done by the tax authorities in monitoring of non-compliance, which is almost automatic. You don't need to physically check whether this person has filed the return or not. The database is available already in the system, and the system itself will trigger non-filers and report it with minimal human intervention. So this is the project insight, or the digitization of tax records. Also, taking the same thing forward, the linking of income tax record with GST is another step which income tax has been taking. And there is this clause 44. Fortunately, this 44 clause is not applicable this year because of COVID. It has been extended. This will be applicable from the next year onwards. Linking of expense with GST, clause 44. As of now, this is not applicable, so we may not spend much time on this particular slide. This will be applicable from next year, so maybe we'll discuss this next year. Reporting of SFT, that is specified financial transactions. Here again, for many transactions now it is mandatory for us to report our PAN number. For example, agar aap gold lene jate ho beyond 50,000, then you need to provide your PAN. If you are opening a bank account, you need to provide your PAN. If you are opening a demat account, you need to provide your PAN. If you are buying goods for more than 2 lakh rupees, even in that case, you need to provide your PAN. So therefore, there are various transactions where PAN is now mandatory. यदि आप PAN नहीं देते हो, तो सामने वाले का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बनता है आपसे फॉर्म नंबर 60 भर के लेने का, which is to say that I do not have PAN number. राइट, काफी सीनियर सिटीजन हमने देखा है कि फॉर्म 60 फिलअप करके देते हैं बैंक्स में एक्सेट्रा, दैट दे डोंट हैव अ पैन नंबर एक्सेट्रा. एंड ये सारे फॉर्म 60 जमा करके यू हैव टू रिपोर्ट टू द टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट ट्वाइस अ ईयर इन फॉर्म नंबर 61A. In form number 61A, that these are the transactions wherein I was not provided with the PAN number, right? That has to be reported in form number 61A. Now, there is a penalty for non-compliance which is 10,000. अगर ये फाइल नहीं करेंगे तो. The other form is specified financial transaction, that is SFT. जहां पे कुछ ट्रांजैक्शंस है, फॉर एग्जांपल परचेस ऑफ मूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी एक्सेट्रा, issuance of shares, wherein these banks, institutions and authorities are required to report such transactions in form number 61B, that is in form number 61A rather. The earlier was form number 61. SFT is form number 61A, wherein you have to mention or you have to report the financial transactions entered with PAN numbers and non-PAN holders both. So here also the scope has been enlarged to report cash sales of 2 lakhs or more, and there is a recurring penalty of 500 per day for non-compliance. Last one 61B may not be, or may not be applicable to all the assessees. This is specific to the banking sector, जहाँ पे फटका और CRS रिपोर्टिंग करना होता है अंडर फॉर्म नंबर 61B. यहाँ पे भी पेनल्टी है 500 per day. So here there is an onerous responsibility on the tax auditor. If you see that you have to check the applicability of these three forms and then report whether the assessee has complied with these compliances or not. So look at it, the first form, that is form number 61. The reporting, that is applicability, हम देखते हैं बैंक, अथॉरिटी और इंस्टीट्यूशन. ओपनिंग ऑफ बैंक अकाउंट, डीमैट अकाउंट को लगता है. परचेज ऑफ म्यूचुअल फंड, फॉरेक्स, आरबीआई बॉन्ड्स ऑफ 50,000 और मोर, कैश डिपॉजिट ऑफ 50,000 और मोर, परचेज एंड सेल ऑफ इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ 10 lakhs और मोर. ये सभी को पैन मैंडेटरी होता है. Hotels and restaurants, cash receipts from person of 50,000 or more. Company, issue of bonds or debts of 50,000 or more. Sale or purchase of shares of 1 lakh per transaction. Last but not the least, sale or purchase of goods or services of INR 2 lakh per transaction. Right? So these are the cases where PAN is mandatory. यदि आप PAN नहीं देते हो तो वेंडर का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बनता है टू ऑब्टेन फॉर्म नंबर 60 एंड रिपोर्ट ऑल दीज ट्रांजैक्शंस इन बायएनुअल रिटर्न इन फॉर्म नंबर 61. एज आई सेड, टैक्स ऑडिटर का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी क्यों बढ़ गया? तो सबसे पहले तो उनको ट्रांजैक्शंस चेक करना पड़ेगा कि वेदर पैन इज मैंडेटरी इन एनी ऑफ द ट्रांजैक्शंस. इफ द आंसर इज यस, वेदर दे हैव ऑब्टेन्ड द पैन नंबर एंड मेंटेन्ड द रिकॉर्ड्स. इफ नॉट, देन वेदर दे हैव ऑब्टेन्ड फॉर्म 60. अगर फॉर्म 60 लिया है तो फॉर्म 61 में रिपोर्ट किया है या नहीं. सो ऑल दीज वेरिफिकेशन इज अ टाइम कंज्यूमिंग एक्सरसाइज एंड ऑफ कोर्स अ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कास्टेड, onerous responsibility casted on the tax auditors to go beyond their duty and go deep into the reporting and verification also. Similarly 61A अगर हम देखते हैं SFT का reporting requirement, cash deposits of INR 10 lakhs in non-current bank account and 50 lakhs in current bank account, cash withdrawal of 50 lakhs from current bank account, fixed deposit of 10 lakhs, credit card payment of 1 lakh in cash or 10 lakhs through other modes, immovable property purchase of 30 lakhs or more. ये सभी cases में SFT reporting होता है, that is reporting by the respective banks, authorities or institutions. कंपनीज के केस में रिपोर्टिंग कभी होता है इफ दे इश्यू शेयर्स और बॉन्ड्स ऑफ 10 lakhs or more or buyback of shares of INR 10 lakhs or more. This is for listed companies only. For any other person, cash sales of INR 2 lakhs for goods or services, यहाँ पे भी SFT reporting होता है. So again, same reporting requirement by the auditor to verify the applicability and to check whether PAN has been obtained and whether proper reporting has been done in form number 61A, as the case may be. So guidance note implementation guide ICAI ने issue किया है on 23rd of August. 20th August से ये amendments applicable है और 23rd August 2018 को implementation guide issue किया था ICAI ने to give guidance on how to do reporting and how to collate the data. So the guidance from ICAI is basically to verify whether the assessee has entered into transaction where the other party was required to give PAN but gave form 60. Assessee needs to file form 61A. Details to be given about form 61A. 61A का guidance है auditor to verify the applicability of 285VA read with rule 114E. In many cases, the assessee are not aware itself of this reporting requirement in form 61A. Even the auditors are at time not aware to check this applicability. वो भी काफी बार मिस हो जाता है. So therefore, first step to verify applicable है amendment या नहीं है और reporting applicable है या नहीं है, and then do the verification. Same thing for CRS under form 61B. The implementation guide provides the inputs for the same. Then next is 34B. रिपोर्टिंग ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस नॉट रिपोर्टेड इन TDS रिटर्न. अभी अगर हम ये 34B का लास्ट कॉलम देखेंगे, whether the statement of TDS, that is tax deducted or collected, contains information or details transactions which are required to be reported. If not, this is important, जो रेड में मैंने हाईलाइट किया हुआ है, please furnish the details of transactions which are not रिपोर्टेड। अभी यहाँ पे आपको टीडीएस रिटर्न देखना है और वेरीफाई करना है कि सब डेटा बराबर अपलोड किया है या सबमिट किया है या नहीं। Now effectively you are entering into the shoes of the tax officer or the TDS officer to verify the accuracy of the TDS compliance or TCS compliance as the case may be. Now you all are aware TCS का भी scope बढ़ गया है 206C1H में, परचेज एंड सेल पे भी TCS आ गया है, 194Q में TDS भी आ गया है परचेज एंड सेल पे। सो देयरफॉर यहाँ पे हमको क्या देखना है कि टीडीएस प्रॉपरली हुआ है या नहीं, एंड सेकेंडली रिपोर्टिंग भी ठीक से हुआ है या नहीं। सो इफेक्टिवली इफ यू सी responsibility again of the auditor has increased, he has to enter the shoes of the TDS officer and check whether the TDS compliance is proper or not proper. So this is where clause 34B का amendment comes into picture and thereby auditor का भी responsibility या obligation बढ़ जाता है। 34B का implementation guide क्या बोलता है कि auditor should take into consideration the relevant section, rules, notification, various judicial pronouncement in relation to the transactions of relevant TDS and TCS as the case may be. If the tax auditor does not agree with the interpretation or view taken by the auditee, the views as observation, he has to express his views as observation in form 3CA clause 3 or form 3CB clause 5. अभी यहाँ पे there is bound to be difference of opinion on, for example, applicability of TDS 1 कि TDS applicable होना चाहिए नहीं होना चाहिए, दूसरा rate of TDS 194C होना चाहिए 194J होना चाहिए, that is 2% होना चाहिए 10% होना चाहिए, वो भी डिबेट हो सकता है। So therefore there may be difference of opinion. If you come across such difference of opinion, then you need to provide those cases in or report those cases in 3CA or 3CB as the case may be. Then moving on to the next aspects of SAR, that is special anti-avoidance rules. Deemed dividend clause 36A. This is again for corporate assessees or private limited companies. Reporting is in the hands of the shareholders. Reporting is in the hands of the shareholders. That is whether any amount has been received in the nature of deemed dividend under section 222E. Quantum of the amount received and date of receipt. अभी सबसे पहले तो as auditor we must understand what do you mean by deemed dividend. अभी deemed dividend in itself is a vexed issue or a complex issue or a complicated issue, जिसमें काफी सारा litigation already है कि whether this is deemed dividend or not deemed dividend, right? So therefore if you see the conceptual framework of deemed dividend which I have tried to capture in these slides to let us understand what do you mean by deemed dividend. So deemed dividend trigger कभी होता है in case of loan or advance to a shareholder by a closely held company is deemed to be taxable as dividend to the extent of accumulated profit. So accumulated profit होगा तभी deemed dividend होगा. It is taxable only on payment basis even though accounts are maintained on mercantile basis. Deemed dividend chargeable at normal rates of tax as business income if the shares are held as stock in trade or income from other sources if the shares are held at investment. EDT पहले applicable नहीं था till financial year 17-18, फिर financial 17-18 से DDT आ गया 30%. Now if you look at financial year 2021 onwards, DDT is no more relevant. Now again dividend is taxable in the hands of the shareholders. So that has been a change in terms of taxability of deemed dividend or dividends also. So let us quickly look at the scheme of taxation कि कभी applicable होता है. It is applicable to closely held companies, no distinction between Indian company and foreign company. Which receipts are covered? Payment in the nature of loan or advance. Exception, payer in the money lending business. So अगर money lending business है तो 222 ये applicable नहीं होगा. Amount set off against previous deemed dividend अगर पहले से already tax हो चुका है तो ये एप्लीकेबल नहीं होगा बिकॉज डबल टैक्सेशन नहीं होना चाहिए. सिमिलरली persons which are covered right is basically the shareholders with 10% or more beneficial ownership. That is the first leg. Second leg is any concern in which such shareholder मतलब who is holding 10% or more in the company is a member or a partner and has substantial interest of 20% or more. So पहला एप्लीकेबिलिटी अगर मैं किसी शेयर होल्डर को दे रहा हूं who is holding 10% or more in the company itself. दूसरा लेग है कि I am not giving it to the shareholder directly, but I am giving it to, for example, a partnership firm or a company where that shareholder, कौन सा shareholder who is holding 10% in my company is holding 20% or more in that particular entity. We have a specific case studies on the subsequent slide so that we can understand it better. Quantum of dividend subject to the extent of accumulated profit. तो अगर accumulated profit नहीं होगा तो डिविडेंड डीम डिविडेंड भी नहीं होगा. अगर लॉस सिचुएशन है तो डीम डिविडेंड नहीं होगा ट्रिगर. Accumulated profits are to be considered as per books of accounts. Timing of taxability, it is taxable on payment basis even though the accounts are maintained on mercantile basis, right? So coming to the case studies or scenarios, I have 3 scenarios, so we'll look at each scenario one by one. Scenario 1, I think you can use the chat box to answer whether dim dividend will get triggered or not triggered in each of the cases. Scenario 1, ICO is a shareholder which is holding 20% in ESCO 1 and the loan is given by ESCO 1 to ICO. Whether it will be taxable as deemed dividend in the hands of ICO, yes or no in the chat box please. Scenario 1 में डीम डिविडेंड ट्रिगर होगा या नहीं होगा? Yes, participants in the chat box. ICO is holding 20% in ESCO 1 and loan is given by ESCO 1 to ICO. Whether dim dividend will get triggered in this case. Yes or no in the chat box. I hope the chat box is enabled, right? Nobody? जाग रहे हैं ना सब लोग? Yes or no?
Members, you can post in the chat box. The chat box is enabled.
Yeah, thank you. Chandraban Gupta says yes. Anyone else? Sanjay Kothari says yes. Okay, so we have 2 answers for yes, and I think the answer is correct. Yes, it will be applicable, it will get triggered. Coming to scenario 2. ICO is a shareholder who holds 20% each in ESCO 1 and ESCO 2. Now the loan is given by ESCO 1 to ESCO 2. Whether dim dividend will get triggered in this case, scenario 2. Yes or no in the chat box quickly. Yes or no in the chat box, scenario 2. Whether dim dividend will get triggered or not get triggered. Yes, yes. Again, same replies by the same people. Yes, it will get triggered because it will fall in the second leg, so therefore it will get triggered. Coming to the last one and the most interesting example. ICO is a shareholder holding 20% shareholding in ESCO 1 and ESCO 1 is holding 20% in ESCO 2. ICO 1 is not holding anything in ESCO 2. The loan is given by ESCO 2 to ICO. Loan is given by ESCO 2 to ICO directly. Whether in this case 222E will get triggered, yes or no? Quickly. whether in this case deemed dividend will get triggered. Yes. Let us analyze whether it will be applicable or not. First leg says 10% or more directly. Now, am I holding 10% or more? The answer is no, I am not holding. If you look at it cumulatively, also I am holding 20% ka 20%, which is only 4%. So therefore, in this case, deemed dividend should not get triggered. Okay. So I have covered few cases where loans and advances are held to be deemed dividend, and these are the case laws, that is Bombay High Court and various judicial pronouncement. For ease of reference, I think the presentation will be circulated to the participants and you can go through these to understand in which cases the deemed dividend gets triggered. In the interest of the time, I'll not go deep into these examples. I think these are self-explanatory, and I have already shared my presentation with the office bearer, so you can go through the same. Look at the meaning of accumulated profit. So effectively, the bottom line or nutshell of this particular slide is that any profit from which you can declare dividend, which is free reserves, in that case, it will be considered to be an accumulated profit, and thereby deemed dividend will get triggered in that case. Key considerations for auditor. You as a tax auditor, आपको क्या करना है? Auditor to examine the details of all loans and advances received from group entities, to evaluate the accumulated profit of the lender. If the loan is given during the year, that is साल के बीच में लोन लिया गया है, so आपको pro rata accumulated profit लेना पड़ेगा for the balance period during the year. Then coming to the implementation guide, which is issued by ICAI, it says that the tax auditor to obtain certificate from the assessee containing the list of closely held companies. Now, what might be possible is that you might be doing a tax audit for a particular company, जिसके बहुत सारे group companies हैं, but आप सिर्फ इसी company का tax audit करते हो. So therefore, you may not be aware, right? You may not be aware of all the group entities or the relationship with the closely held company. So therefore, it is always advisable to take a certificate from the assessee containing the list of closely held companies where the beneficial holder of the share is not less than 10%. Also, you need to obtain the list of concerns taking loans from the closely held company. Appropriate remarks in Form 3CA, 3CB about inability to independently verify the information and reliance on certificates to be given. Payments made by closely held company on behalf of assessee, difficult to have any records. You need to give, अगर किसी company के behalf पे payment किया है, on behalf payment है, तो वहाँ पे again it will be difficult to verify. So you need to give remarks अगर ऐसा कोई transaction है तो. If already tax in the hands of the assessee as perquisites, cannot be deemed dividend and therefore it should not be reported. Verify form number 26 says this is not relevant for this year. ये सिर्फ AY 18-19 तक ही relevant था. Appropriate remark where beneficial shareholder is not the registered shareholder, because here the taxability is in the hands of the beneficial shareholder, and there are few judicial precedents where it says that the registered shareholder and the beneficial shareholder has to be the same for 222E to get triggered. Accumulated profit on the date of transactions may be determined at the time. As I said कि during the year अगर होगा तो pro rata basis पे आपको करना है, and then you need to report it accordingly. Give remarks as regards the decisions relied upon for taking any stand on any legal position. Next is clause 29A for forfeiture of money received as advance for transfer of capital asset. Now, this is specifically applicable for forfeiture of capital asset, for forfeiture of money received as advance or capital asset taxable in the hands of the recipient as income from other sources. Taxable in the hands of, just a second. So ये तभी होगा जब इनकम फ्रॉम अदर सोर्सेज में फॉरफीचर टैक्स होगा, right? So what is relevant here is that it has to be for transfer of capital asset. If it is for stock in trade, then 5629 will not get triggered, business income will get triggered. So this reporting is only for 5629. So if you look at what is taxable, then the sum of money should be received as advance or otherwise in the course of negotiation for a transfer of capital asset. Earlier, this amount which was forfeited was reduced from the cost of acquisition, but now from financial year 2014-15, that is AY 15-16 onwards, the forfeited amount is taxable as income from other sources. So पहले हम क्या करते थे, कॉस्ट में से रिड्यूस कर देते थे जो भी पैसा मिला हो, but now it is taxable as income from other sources. Now the issue is, how do you detect that an amount has been forfeited in the absence of any accounting entry? Abhi, for example, I have transferred or I have entered into a deal for transfer of my flat or immovable property, right? For transfer of my asset or immovable property. Now, what is relevant here is, due to whatever reasons, the deal is cancelled. COVID situation है, job चला गया है सामने वाले का, and he cannot continue with the deal. So what I will do is, I will say ठीक है, जो भी deposit या advance मुझे पहले मिला है, that I will not refund, I will forfeit that. I will forfeit that. So if I forfeit that particular amount, then that will be taxable as income from other sources in my hands. That will be taxable as income from other sources in my hands. So that is where it is important, or that is where it is critical. Okay. Now, how do I as tax auditor, how do I come to know? अभी ये मैंने forfeit तो कर दिया, पैसा तो already मेरे पास पड़ा है, but liabilities में खड़ा है. Unless I pass an accounting entry, how do I as an auditor come to know that there is a forfeiture? That is a typical or practical issue. Year of taxability in case of long standing credit. अभी ये काफी सालों से क्रेडिट में पड़ा है मेरे लोन लाइबिलिटीज में, ठीक है. मेरा डील कैंसिल हो गया, मैंने फॉरफिट भी कर दिया, बट मेरे बुक्स में ऐसे ही खड़ा है. हाउ डू आई डिटरमाइन एज टैक्स ऑडिटर एज टू ये कौन से साल में टैक्स करना है? सम ऑफ मनी इज वाइड इनफ टू इंक्लूड EMD, दैट इज अर्नेस्ट मनी डिपॉजिट ऑल्सो. नाउ दिस इज द रिपोर्टिंग फॉर 5629. अभी इंप्लीमेंटेशन गाइड क्या बोलता है? No reporting required for forfeited amount in respect of personal capital asset. इसका बुक्स में कोई एंट्री नहीं है. अभी ये जो मैंने एग्जांपल दिया, फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई एम इनटू द बिजनेस, ठीक है, तो मेरा पर्सनल फ्लैट जो है वो मेरे बिजनेस के बैलेंस शीट में तो आएगा नहीं. सो इट बिकम्स माय पर्सनल कैपिटल एसेट. कैपिटल गेन वगैरह लगेगा, 5629 भी ट्रिगर होगा, बट 3CD में रिपोर्टिंग नहीं आएगा बिकॉज दिस इज अ पर्सनल कैपिटल एसेट. Reporting required only if advance is outstanding for a considerable period of time. No reporting unless it is forfeited by an act of an assessee. Should be positive act. No reporting required for forfeiture of amount in respect of stock in trade. There should be a right to forfeiture as per the contract. So there should be a right to forfeiture as per the contract. So that is how it is. Now, a mere notice of forfeiture contested by other party will not amount to forfeiture. It has to actual write back. If not written back by the assessee, not to report giving the stand of the assessee. Where contingencies that permit the forfeiture has occurred, but yet the assessee believes that this amount is not at the disposal of the assessee. ठीक है, assessee बोलता है कि बॉस ये पैसा मिला है, but ये forfeiture नहीं है. It might be contested or it might be challenged before the court of law. In that case, you may take a MR from the client and decide not to report and give the facts that what is the issue and why you are not reporting. Unilateral write back of the amount without any contractual right may not amount. अभी ऐसा practically कोई करेगा नहीं, कोई write back तो करेगा नहीं. Write back without forfeiture also nobody will do. अपने आप से कोई P&L में credit करेगा नहीं. So therefore, दो implementation guide gives us the guidance, but practically ऐसा केस होगा नहीं. Next is very important, 56 to 10 clause 29B, that is gift tax, gift reporting. यहाँ पे क्या होता है, पहले 56 to 7A हुआ करता था, अभी both these sections are no more relevant. Now we have a consolidated section of 56 to 10, which says that if you receive any money or property without consideration or inadequate consideration in excess of 50,000, then that will be taxable as income from other sources under section 56 to 10. For immovable property, there was a relaxation given from 5%, which was been increased to 10%. So आपका stamp duty value से अगर 10% तक variation है तो चलेगा, 10% से ज्यादा variation है तो ही 56 to 10 में taxable होगा. And of course, during the COVID, for first purchase and for first sale, they have given an exemption up to 20%. So ये 10% बढ़ के 20% हो गया है. But generally, as per the section, it is 10% still. Only 20% relaxation is for a limited period. Excess of FMV over consideration to be taxed as income from other source. FMV to be deemed as per rule 11 UA. अभी FMV कैसे लेंगे हम? How do we determine as per rule 11 UA? So as far as fixed asset or immovable property is concerned, it will be the stamp duty value. और बाकी cases में it is the fair market value. Shares के case में there is a specific valuation mechanism which is given under rule 11 UA. अभी यहाँ पे issue ये है that this might result into double taxation. How double taxation? There is a corresponding section 50CA for transfer of shares. For transfer of shares, there is a corresponding section 50CA जो transferor के हाथ में tax करता है, that if you transfer the shares at a price which is less than the 11 UA value or less than the fair market value, as we say, then the difference will be taxed as income from capital gains in the hands of the transferor under section 50CA. अभी ये 56 to 10 is from the perspective of the recipient. So effectively same transaction, यहाँ पे fair market value is say 1 crore 20 lakhs, the transaction value is 1 crore, right? Difference of 20 lakhs will be taxed first in the hands of the transferor under section 50CA and also in the hands of the transferee, that is the recipient under section 56 to 10. दोनों के हाथ में टैक्स होगा. 20 लाख दो बार टैक्स हो रहा है, right? So therefore it is a double taxation. Also cost step up in the hands of the recipient for subsequent sale is allowed. So therefore अगर मैंने FMV पे टैक्स भर दिया, so later on जब भी मैं ये एसेट बेचूंगा तभी ये जो मैंने FMV लिया है that I can take as a cost of acquisition. That much benefit is available to me when I sell this particular property. Now let me tell you, a writ petition has been filed by the Chamber of Tax Consultants, which is pending before the Bombay High Court, challenging the applicability of section 56 to 10, challenging the applicability of 56 to 10 and also 50CA also before the Bombay High Court. The matter is pending before the Bombay High Court and we'll see what Bombay High Court has to say on this particular aspect. Next, look at the issues of 56 to 10. Whether fresh issues will be covered, the answer is arguably yes. There is one Supreme Court ruling Kodai Distillers where it says that issuance of share does not amount to transfer. But यहाँ पे 56 to 10 में wording is not transfer, but the wording is received. So therefore, when you receive the shares, arguably even fresh issue of shares will be covered. Whether issue of bonus shares will be covered, Supreme Court in the case of Dalmia Investment has said that it will not be covered because it is appropriation out of your own profits. Right shares के केस में क्या होगा? So there is a Mumbai Tribunal judgment in the case of Sudhir Menon HUF where it says that if it is a proportionate allotment है मतलब सभी shareholders को right share दिया गया है तो tax नहीं होगा. But if it is not a proportionate or disproportionate allotment, 10 shareholder है, 10 में से सिर्फ 2 को ही right issue दिया है, बाकी 8 ने नहीं लिया है. In that case, arguably it may get triggered because Sudhir Menon may not be applicable in that case. Buyback, we have Mumbai Tribunal Ora Financials जो बोलता है कि buyback tax को 56 to 10 trigger नहीं करेगा. Now there are other issues also in terms of using the valuation rule 11 UA. For example, chain holding. अभी chain holding क्या होता है? I am receiving shares of company A. I am receiving shares of company A. तो अभी मुझे कंपनी ए का 11 यूए वैल्यू निकालना है. Now company A is in turn holding shares of company B as well as company C. इसको बोलते हैं chain holding. A is holding in B and B is holding in C. Chain holding. ठीक है, chain हो गया A into B, B into C. अभी before actually doing valuation of A, I will have to do valuation of B, right? अभी B का वैल्यूएशन करने से पहले मुझे C का वैल्यूएशन करना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज B के वैल्यू में C का वैल्यू इंक्लूड करना है. So therefore, for undertaking valuation of A, I will have to first do valuation of C. C का वैल्यू B के वैल्यू में मुझे ऐड करना पड़ेगा, एंड सिमिलरली B का वैल्यू डिटरमाइन करके मुझे B का वैल्यू A के वैल्यू में ऐड करना पड़ेगा. दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ चेन होल्डिंग. मल्टीपल होल्डिंग में क्या होगा? A is holding into B and C together. A is holding into B also and A is holding into C together. C also. Multiple holding. यहाँ पे भी वापस मुझे B और C का वैल्यूएशन करना पड़ेगा A का वैल्यूएशन करने से पहले. Last but not the least, cross holding. This is interesting. A is holding into B and B is holding into A. Cross holding. Cross holding के केस में रूल 11 UA fails. अभी बिकॉज अगर हम एक्सेल में वर्किंग करते हैं तो यू माइट हैव कम अक्रॉस सर्कुलर रेफरेंस. एक्सेल में यू माइट हैव कम अक्रॉस सर्कुलर रेफरेंस, मतलब ए के वैल्यू के लिए मुझे बी का वैल्यू चाहिए, बी के वैल्यू के लिए मुझे ए का वैल्यू चाहिए. ठीक है, ए का निकालूंगा तो बी का वैल्यू लगेगा, बी का निकालूंगा तो ए का वैल्यू लगेगा, क्रॉस रेफरेंस. सो देयरफॉर आई विल नॉट बी एबल टू अप्लाई रूल 11 यूए एट ऑल इन दीज केसेस ऑफ क्रॉस होल्डिंग. इंप्लीमेंटेशन गाइड क्या बोलता है? Tax auditor should obtain a certificate from the assessee regarding any such transaction during the year, either received in his business or profession or recorded in account of such business or profession. Receipts in personal accounts are not recorded in business, so therefore it may be out of the purview. If valuation disputed by the assessee, then you need to mention the facts. The value adopted by the stamp duty authority is value claimed by the assessee. In case of doubt about valuation, it is advisable to refer to the registered valuer, because we are not experts or we may not be expert. So therefore, we may refer it to the registered valuer for obtaining the 11 UA valuation. Next is 269 ST, that is cash transactions. Now, as you are aware that a person cannot have any cash receipts of more than or equal to 2 lakhs from one person in a day, from one event or from one transaction. 269 ST. Okay, this is applicable to all the persons, individual and businesses, irrespective of whether it is revenue item, capital item, taxable or exempt. Now, what is the penalty? It is equal to the amount of cash receipts. So, assuming I am receiving 5 lakhs, तो penalty भी 5 lakhs लग जाएगा. ठीक है. Now, let us look at the applicability scenarios in which it will be applicable. 4.5 lakhs का sale है through 3 different invoices to the same person on the same day. 4 lakh sale in one invoice, but receipt of INR 2 lakhs on 2 different days. This also will get covered because person is the same, though it is received or transaction is the same, one invoice. So ये one transaction में cover हो जाएगा. Last but not the least, INR 1 lakh for 3 different services from same person. Arguably, this may not get triggered. In this case, 269 ST may not get triggered factually if it is for 3 different services and on 3 different days. अगर 1 लाख 3 different दिन पे मिला है तो arguably taxable नहीं होगा और penalty नहीं लगेगा under section 269 ST. However, if it is from one single service or one invoice, in that case, और 1 लाख रुपया same day पे मिला है, then it may get triggered and 269 ST will get triggered. डिस्क्लोजर क्या देना है मुझे 269 ST में टैक्स ऑडिटर को? नेम, एड्रेस एंड पैन, नेम, अमाउंट एंड अमाउंट ऑफ नेचर एंड अमाउंट ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शन एंड डेट ऑफ पेमेंट. इंप्लीमेंटेशन गाइड से जर्नल एंट्रीज अगर होगा, दैट इज बुक एंट्री, पेमेंट बाय वे ऑफ बुक एंट्री, डेटर, क्रेडिटर, सेट ऑफ एक्सेट्रा, तो उस केस में आर्ग्यूएबली रिपोर्टिंग नहीं लगेगा. दैट इज व्हाट इंप्लीमेंटेशन गाइड सेज. गवर्नमेंट कंपनीज के लिए भी रिपोर्टिंग नहीं लगेगा. फॉर्म में ही नीचे दिया गया है दैट गवर्नमेंट और गवर्नमेंट कंपनी अगर इन्वॉल्व है इधर रिसीट और पेमेंट, इन दैट केस रिपोर्टिंग इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. No difference between revenue and capital. This is what we already discussed. For clause 31BB and 31BD, the standard reporting or caveat is given by the implementation guide that it is not possible for me or us to verify whether loans or deposit have been accepted otherwise by way of account pay check. So similarly, जैसे हम 269 SS और 269 T में reporting करते हैं, वैसा ही similar wordings हम 269 ST में modify करके use कर सकते हैं. Information to be retained in working paper for all clauses. Okay. Coming to GAR, again, this is kept in abeyance till 31st March 2022. अगले साल तक वापस abeyance में. So we may skip these slides, not applicable this year. Other changes in tax audit report. Additional reporting under section 43B for payment to railways. So पहले railways 43B में covered नहीं था, अभी railways को भी अगर मैं payment करूँगा और कुछ payable है, it will be allowable on payment basis. So it appears that railways is trying to improve their cash inflows arguably. 32AD का reporting है, that is for investment allowance or accelerated depreciation in machinery for entities set up in backward areas. Then last is basically there was one typo error in clause 31 where taken or accepted गलती से आ गया था, उसके जगह पे repayment होना चाहिए था. So it has been rectified for 269 SS and T for repayment. So this has been typo error था, वो rectify हो चुका है. Transfer pricing and other provisions, I think this may not be relevant, but still from the sake of completeness, I will quickly run through these slides. Thin capitalization is in case where I have some amount or interest payable to my associated enterprise or group company overseas. Associated enterprise or group company overseas. तो ये केस में thin capitalization rule बोलता है कि you cannot pay interest beyond 30%, beyond 30% of your EBITDA, beyond 30% of your EBITDA. ठीक है, अगर if you are paying more than 30% of your EBITDA, then the differential amount will be disallowed. Differential amount will be disallowed. So this is reporting in relation to that कि आपको effectively verify करना है the applicability of section 94B and then report in clause 30B. Okay, moving on. These are key considerations for thin capitalization, computation of allowable interest. So effectively यहाँ पे भी काम बढ़ गया. I need to compute the allowability under and disallowability under 94B. Industries with high leverage, that is infrastructure companies, जहाँ पे gestation period ज्यादा है, 4 साल 5 साल लग जाता है कंपनी को प्रॉफिट में आने के लिए, वहाँ पे मेरा disallowance बढ़ जाएगा. Interest to AEs though meet arm's length standard but exceeds the threshold of 30%, then also it will be disallowed. Applicable to Indian branches of foreign banks guaranteed by AE. AE guarantee implicit and explicit, whether partial guarantee से 60% दिया है तो वो कवर होगा क्या नहीं, that is a practical issue or practical challenge. So there is implementation guide on this also, which says that the expenditure of similar nature should be read in the context of the debt. I think this is self-explanatory, and if at all applicable in your case, you may go through it. It may not be applicable to all the cases. So maybe we can go through these slides. Similarly, secondary adjustment. This is again in relation to transfer pricing कि अगर कोई transfer pricing adjustment होता है, for example, if there is a disallowance, of any expenditure, right? Then I need to bring back that amount. I need to bring back that amount from overseas. अगर मैंने ज्यादा पैसा दे दिया है, ठीक है, अभी फॉर एग्जांपल यहाँ पे देखो सेल ऑफ गुड्स 1000, आर्म्स लेंथ प्राइस होता है 1200, तो आई हैव रिकवर्ड 200 लेस. आई हैव रिकवर्ड 200 लेस. सो व्हाट डज द गवर्नमेंट से कि ये 200 रुपये आपको ओवरसीज से इंडिया में लाना है, वापस लाना है. ठीक है, अगर आप ये नहीं करते हो, अगर ये आप नहीं करते हो तो ये 200 रुपए पे आपको डीम्ड इंटरेस्ट लगेगा. डीम्ड इंटरेस्ट लगेगा. इट विल बी कंसीडर टू बी अ डीम्ड एडवांस. और जैसे डीम्ड डिविडेंड होता है वैसे आपको ये इंटरेस्ट, डिफरेंशियल इंटरेस्ट पे करना पड़ेगा. डिफरेंशियल इंटरेस्ट पे करना पड़ेगा. दिस इज कॉल्ड एज सेकेंडरी एडजस्टमेंट. सो अगेन सिमिलर रिपोर्टिंग in clause 30B for secondary adjustments. This is effect from Finance Act 2017. So again, it may or may not be applicable. This will be applicable only for transfer pricing adjustment cases. C by C reporting, again, this is for transfer pricing reporting for large corporates. This is for reporting of 3CEAD. So therefore यहाँ पे भी मुझे अगर मेरे को 3CEAD applicable होता है तो I need to report it here. So again relating to transfer pricing and for large corporates or large SSCs जिनको CBC reporting applicable होता है, the applicability is approximately I believe 500 crores for applicability of these C by C reporting. Now coming to ICDS, right? Significant implications of ICDS. We'll quickly go through the applicability of ICDS and then come to the reporting of ICDS. Okay, so as you all might be aware that ICDS, and as I said earlier also, ICDS is applicable to all assessees who are following mercantile system of accounting, okay. This is applicable from AY 16-17 or financial year 16-17 or AY 17-18 onwards. Now these are the 10 notified ICDSs. ICDS 1, accounting policies. ICDS 2, inventories. 3, construction contract. 4, revenue recognition. 5, tangible fixed assets. 6, effects of changes in foreign currency. 7, government grants. 8, securities. 9, borrowing cost. And 10, provision, contingent liabilities and contingent asset. Now आप बोलोगे कि इसमें से कुछ भी एप्लीकेबल नहीं है मेरे एसएससी को, that will be wrong. Right? इसमें से कुछ ना कुछ, फॉर एग्जाम्पल ICDS 1, ICDS 2, ICDS 4, 5, 9, 10, ये मेजॉरिटी सभी क्लाइंट्स को एप्लीकेबल होगा और होगा ही. ओके, I have also given equivalent accounting standard and Ind AS for ready reference. Now this is a disclosure requirement. ये हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया है, clause 13D, E and F. So this is E, that is financial impact, and F, if you see this. So as I said, अगर E और D और E आपका not applicable है, even in that case, you will have to give reporting in clause F. Okay. So ये 8 ICDS का आपको disclosure देना ही पड़ेगा. और मैंने पीछे towards the end of my presentation, I have given few specimen or sample disclosures which you can use as a ready reference, sir, for 3CD reporting in clause 13F. फिर आपके केस के हिसाब से आप उसको मॉडिफाई कर सकते हो. Now quickly going through the brief. As I said, ICDS को हम पूरा कवर नहीं कर पाएंगे because it is a altogether different topic. But I have tried to quickly capture a snapshot from each ICDS that what is relevant here, what is not relevant here. ICDS 1 में relevance क्या है? Materiality का concept उन्होंने निकाल दिया है. Prudence is something which they have removed again, which was there earlier. Prudence मतलब mark to market loss और expected loss आपको पहले जो allow होता था. There was a Supreme Court ruling in the case of Woodward Governor also. Now that judgment to some extent has been overruled, and to say that mark to market loss and expected loss will not be allowed under ICDS, and you need to report changes in accounting policies also. So these are the disclosure requirements for ICDS 1, all significant accounting policies. Now this is important. Corporate SSCs के केस में notes to account और accounting policies होता है, but पार्टनरशिप फर्म, प्रोप्राइटरी कंसर्न, LLPs, वहां पे बहुत बार हम लोग सिग्निफिकेंट अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज नहीं बनाते बिकॉज देयर इज नो मैंडेट अंडर एनी स्पेसिफिक लॉ. बट हियर ICDS में हमको अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज रिपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा. So therefore for non-corporate assessees उतना काम बढ़ जाएगा to prepare the accounting policies. It can be 1 pager, 2 pager, 3 pager, depending on policies being adopted. And if there is any change in accounting policy, you need to report that also. Lastly, if any fundamental accounting assumption of going concern, consistency, accrual are followed, no disclosure is required. But if they are not followed, if a fundamental accounting assumption is not followed, the fact should be disclosed. For example, कोविड की वजह से यदि आपको लगता है कि ये बिजनेस का गोइंग कंसर्न इंपैक्ट हो रहा है, कोविड की वजह से बिजनेस का कंटिन्यूटी और गोइंग कंसर्न इंपैक्ट हो रहा है, then you need to report that in ICDS 1, that is clause 13F. ICDS 2, this is for valuation of inventories. Here what is included is inventories including those for sale of goods, etc. Cost formula for inventory, ICDS and accounting standard is almost the same. Deferral scheme, deferred settlement scheme, वो ICDS में recognize नहीं होता है, but accounting standard 2 में Ind AS में वो recognize होता है, but ICDS में वो recognize नहीं होता है. So therefore we are not concerned with deferral scheme. Accounting में भी relevant नहीं है, accounting standard में और ICDS में भी relevant नहीं है. Disclosure requirement under ICDS 2. Hello. Yeah. Yeah. हूँ कर ही दूँ सर, आज पे कर दूँ. हाँ ऑनलाइन कर दूँ. या sorry. So these are the disclosure requirements for ICDS 2, that is accounting policies adopted in the measuring inventories, including cost formula use. If you are using standard costing, then standard costing methods used, and if it is you need to confirm that standard cost is approximating to the actual cost. Total carrying amount of the inventories and its classification appropriate to a person. This is what is to be disclosed in ICDS 2. ICDS 3, this is specific to construction contract. Now here what are the changes? Key changes are retention money is proposed to be taxed under ICDS under the percentage completion method, and percentage completion method is mandated. Early stage of completion has been defined कि अगर आपका 25% होता है तो आपको प्रॉफिट ऑफर करना है मैंडेटरीली. अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड में ऐसा कोई थ्रेशोल्ड नहीं है 25% का. So there are people who used to offer even after 30%, 40%, but ICDS में आपको कंपल्सरीली 25% होने के बाद प्रॉफिट टैक्स को ऑफर करना पड़ेगा. फ्यूचर और एंटिसिपेटेड लॉसेस आर नॉट अलाउड नाउ एज पर ICDS, so therefore that will be not allowed, so that adjustment will be required. Incidental income, it was earlier reduced from contract cost, but now they are saying incidental income will have to be offered to tax as income from other sources, so that is another important aspect. ICDS 3 का disclosure requirement, amount of contract revenue recognized as revenue during the period, method used to determine the stage of completion. Stage of completion आप कैसे determine करोगे कि 25% हुआ है, 50% हुआ है, वो आपको mention करना है. There are different methods, that is physical completion method, cost method, etc. To determine how do you arrive at the percentage completion. For contract in progress, that is WIP, you need to report the amount of cost incurred and recognize profit up to the reporting date, amount of advances received, and the amount of retentions. Then moving on to ICDS 4, for the first time we have service contract also coming under ICDS 4, wherein they are asking us to do percentage completion for all the service contract where it is more than 90 days. Similarly, अगर continuous contract है, for example retainer services etc., वहां पे आप straight lining पे ऑफर कर सकते हो. Executory contract, it requires recognition of provision of for onerous contracts. ICDS 4 scopes out executory contracts, so ICDS 4 में executory contract नहीं आता है. Exchange of goods, that is barter, there is no specific guidance for ICDS on barter. Interest income pay, there is a different opinion under ICDS, where ICDS says that interest is to be recognized on time basis. However, there are few judicial precedents which have held that interest is taxable only when there is approval or right to receive. So this debate will still continue for taxability of interest going forward also. Disclosure requirement for ICDS 4 in clause 13F, it is basically for revenue recognition. What is the amount which you have recognized and not recognized due to lack of certainty. Method used to determine the stage of completion for service contracts, and for service transaction, that is WIP, amount of cost incurred and recognized profit up to the end of the year, amount of advances received and amount of retention. Similarly, जैसा ICDS 3 में था वैसे ICDS 4 में for service contracts. ICDS 5 fixed assets. Now here it is similar to your tax depreciation schedule. So therefore आप क्या करोगे ICDS 5 में, either you can give reference to clause 18 which is आपका tax depreciation schedule, or you can reproduce that tax depreciation schedule here, copy paste कर सकते हो वापस, या तो you can just give reference to clause 18, as simple as that. Because if you see this disclosure requirement, it is exactly the same as required in clause 18. अपना depreciation schedule में जो लगता है, description, rate, actual cost, WDV, etc., all that can be done through this. Coming to ICDS 6, while there is no reporting requirement for ICDS 6, but computation is important, because ICDS 6 में क्या होता है कि as I said, mark to market आपको नहीं मिलेगा, सिर्फ monetary item का मिलेगा, that is on balance sheet, receivable and payable, debtor and creditor, otherwise आपको नहीं मिलेगा. Then secondly, for capital assets, earlier there was a position being taken in law that for capital asset आपको mark to market नहीं मिलेगा, but now ICDS says subject to section 43A. Now 43A क्या बोलता है? It is only in relation to imported asset. अगर imported asset के relation में कोई adjustment है foreign exchange का, then you need to adjust the WDV or cost of the asset. But this is only for imported asset. 43A is not applicable to local assets. So अगर आपने foreign से loan लिया है, ECB लिया है और local asset purchase किया है, तो 43A is not applicable. So in that case, even if it is for capital asset, the foreign exchange gain or loss that is mark to market basis will be allowed to you as per ICDS. Similarly, अगर non monetary item है तो उस पे आपको mark to market नहीं मिलेगा. It will be only on adjustment. Actual payment में जो भी loss होगा वही आपको मिलेगा. Also coming to the exchange differences on trading, speculation, hedging और firm commitment. अभी for example trading क्या होता है? मेरा कोई underlying receivable या payable नहीं है. I am just trading into foreign exchange, right? Just to earn the difference. Or speculation. Again, speculation मतलब I believe कि डॉलर ऊपर जाएगा पे तो मैं डॉलर परचेस करके रखता हूँ. तो अगेन स्पेकुलेशन. हेजिंग ऑफ फर्म कमिटमेंट. हेजिंग ऑफ फर्म कमिटमेंट मतलब मेरे पास ऑर्डर है बट वो ऑर्डर एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हुआ है, तो ये जो है अगले महीने में, दैट इज इफ आई एम इन द मंथ ऑफ मार्च, आई बिलीव कि अगर अप्रैल और मई में ये मेरा रिसीवेबल खड़ा होने वाला है, डेटर खड़ा होने वाला है, तो मैं अभी से हेज कर देता हूं. दैट इज कॉल्ड फर्म कमिटमेंट. एज आई सेड, हमको सिर्फ मॉनिटरी आइटम का ही फॉरेन एक्सचेंज लॉस या गेन मिलेगा. हेजिंग ऑफ फर्म कमिटमेंट, दिस इज कॉल्ड अ फर्म कमिटमेंट. मेरा रिसीवेबल पेएबल नहीं है, सिर्फ ऑर्डर है. दिस इज कॉल्ड अ फर्म कमिटमेंट. लास्ट इज हाईली प्रोबेबल फोरकास्ट ट्रांजैक्शन. हाईली प्रोबेबल फोरकास्ट ट्रांजैक्शन मतलब क्या? ना मेरे पास ऑर्डर है, ना मेरे पास रिसीवेबल पेएबल है. मुझे ऐसा लगता है बेस्ड ऑन माय पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस कि अप्रैल महीने में इतना एक्सपोर्ट होगा या इतना इंपोर्ट होगा, देयरफॉर इतना रिसीवेबल होगा या इतना पेएबल होगा. That is my highly probable forecast transactions. I am just forecasting and hedging it right away. ये केस में भी मुझे mark to market नहीं मिलेगा. It will be allowed only on settlement, right? As per accounting, this is allowed. Earlier, prior to ICDS, also this was allowed on account of what I can say, the Woodward Governor Supreme Court ruling. But now because of ICDS, this will not be allowed. Similarly, डेरिवेटिव ट्रांजैक्शन का भी ट्रीटमेंट सेम, अगर मॉनेटरी आइटम के लिए है तो आपको वो मार्क टू मार्केट मिलेगा, और जो भी आपका प्रीमियम या डिस्काउंट होगा दैट विल बी स्प्रेड ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, और मार्क टू मार्केट आपका होगा. बट इफ इट इज फॉर ऑल दीज 3 नेगेटिव आइटम जो हमने ऊपर डिस्कस किया, दैट इज ट्रेडिंग, स्पेकुलेशन, हेजिंग और हाईली प्रोबेबल फोरकास्ट, तो वहां पे भी आपको मार्क टू मार्केट डेरिवेटिव का भी नहीं मिलेगा, दैट इज फॉरवर्ड कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का भी नहीं मिलेगा. That also will be done only on settlement. That is the difference between ICDS 6 and accounting standard. ICDS 7, that is for government grants. Now government grants में एक amendment ऐसा आया था 2015 में, that if it is in relation to depreciable asset, then that grant is to be reduced from the cost of the asset. Apart from that, all, I would say, grants, whether for capital purpose, revenue purpose, it will be taxable as income. It will be taxable as income. You cannot say that this is capital receipt or capital grant, etc. That arguments are no more relevant now. So that is the crux of ICDS 7, the government grants. And these are the disclosure requirements. If it is in relation to depreciable asset, what is the nature and amount of grant received, nature of and amount of grant recognized, not recognized. This is what is the reporting requirement as per ICDS 7. ICDS 8, securities. Securities may be basically the thing is, पहले हम लोग करते थे मार्क टू मार्केट या 31 मार्च को रिवैल्यूएशन करते थे सिक्योरिटीज हेल्ड एज स्टॉक इन ट्रेड, स्क्रिप्ट बाय स्क्रिप्ट. मतलब इफ आई एम होल्डिंग शेयर्स ऑफ ए लिमिटेड, सो ए लिमिटेड का स्टॉक, ए लिमिटेड का परचेस प्राइस और मार्केट प्राइस कंपेयर करते थे, एंड देन वी यूज्ड टू रीवैल्यू. अभी यहाँ पे क्या बोलते हैं, दैट यू शुड नॉट डू दैट. आपको रीवैल्यू क्या करना है, बकेट अप्रोच. आपके पास 5 कंपनीज का शेयर है, पांचों का परचेस प्राइस का टोटल लो, पांचों का नेट रियलाइजेबल वैल्यू और मार्केट प्राइस का टोटल लो, एंड टोटल कंपेयर करो. बकेट अप्रोच, दैट इज द ओनली डिफरेंस as far as ICDS 8 is concerned. However, there is no disclosure requirement for ICDS 8. Borrowing cost में है कि quickly summarizing the borrowing cost is basically, अगर आपका कोई specific borrowing है, अगर आपका कोई specific borrowing है, that is loan taken for a specific asset, then that has to be capitalized right from day one, irrespective of आप उसको कभी यूज करते हो. ठीक है. But if it is a general borrowing, तो जनरल बोरोइंग को आपको कैपिटलाइज करना है एज पर अ फॉर्मूला विच इज गिवन हियर, A into B by C on a pro rata basis from the date of utilization, from the date of utilization. So that is the crux of ICDS 9, and these are the disclosure requirements for accounting policies and the amount of borrowing cost capitalized during the previous year. Last but not the least, ICDS 10. अभी ICDS 10 में what is critical and what is relevant is, first, provision के केस में पहले वर्ड होता था probable, that probable has been now revamped, and as far as ICDS is concerned, they are using reasonable certainty. It means it has to be more certain, more likely than not, more than 50% chances कि ये मुझे पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा, ये आउटफ्लो होगा out of the past obligation. ठीक है. सिमिलरली कंटिंजेंट एसेट का रिकॉग्निशन चाहिए मुझे, रिकॉग्निशन ऑफ कंटिंजेंट एसेट इज रिक्वायर्ड, विच वाज नेवर देयर टिल नाउ. अकाउंटिंग में भी कंटिंजेंट एसेट हम तभी रिकॉग्नाइज करते हैं व्हेन देयर इज अ वर्चुअल सर्टेनिटी, ओके. सो फर्स्ट टाइम हियर वी आर सेइंग कंटिंजेंट एसेट को भी रिकॉग्नाइज करना है. अभी कंटिंजेंट एसेट का एग्जांपल हो सकता है जीएसटी रिफंड रिसीवेबल. अभी मुझे पता नहीं कभी मिलेगा, आई डोंट नो व्हेन आई विल रिसीव, बट अगर ऐसा है कि बेसिकली दिस कंटिंजेंट एसेट इज मोर लाइकली देन नॉट दैट आई विल रिसीव दिस रिफंड, तो एसेट को भी मुझे रिकॉग्नाइज करना पड़ेगा. अभी एसेट का रिकॉग्निशन मतलब मुझे उस पे आज टैक्स पे करना पड़ेगा. मुझे रिफंड नहीं मिला है तो भी उस पे मुझे आज की तारीख में टैक्स पे करना पड़ेगा, which is weird, which is really very weird. So these are the disclosure requirements for provisions: brief description, nature of obligation, carrying amount, addition during the year, utilized during the year, and balance carried forward. Similarly, contingent asset may be brief description of the nature and asset, related income, carrying amount, additional amount, or amount carried forward during the year or amount reversed during the year. So this is the disclosure requirement for ICDS 10. Now key takeaways, as I said, that linking of expenditure with GST, data integration between government department is important, which is what the government is trying to do. Reporting of PAN and financial transactions, onerous responsibility casted on tax auditor. So therefore you need to be aware of applicability and then the reporting norms. Reporting of deemed dividend, it is very, very subjective and contentious issue. Abusive practices on gift transactions, tax auditor to review the valuations. Restriction on cash transactions, again it is practically difficult for me as tax auditor to verify and volume the voluminous data. GAR आएगा तभी देखेंगे, highly onerous again, because GAR itself, the applicability of GAR itself is something which is tricky. Thin capitalization in CBC, again it is subjective and subject to interpretation for transfer pricing matters. Now this is what I was talking about, sample specimen of 3CD annexures for clause 13F. ये एक सैंपल मैंने दिया है आपको, जितना भी ICDS applicable है, you can go through that and you can use this as a base and modify it based on the facts and circumstances of your own case. Okay, so before we move on to the question and answers, I had specifically kept half an hour for Q&A. Before that, I would like to highlight, or I would like to show, I don't know whether you are aware or you have that checklist with you, but I just thought that I will also show, you know, I'm just flashing the checklist which is issued by the ICAI, so that this will help you as a guiding principle of what details are to be. Quickly, I'll just flash this. I'll share again. Yeah, so is this Word file visible? Can you see this Word file on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is the checklist which is issued by the ICAI, and I think this will be of help. If required, if you don't have, I'll circulate this also. This talks about everything, and clause by clause, if you see, the checklist is given कि आपको क्या क्या करना है, yes, no, परमानेंट फाइल में रखना है, टेम्पररी और वर्किंग पेपर फाइल में रखना है. Clause by clause, it is a 58-pager document. So this you can use as a tool. You can use as a tool for gathering a checklist of information from the clients for each and every clause of tax audit. Now, why this is important or why this is relevant is basically, you know, nowadays it is very easy for tax authorities or any government agencies to catch hold of the auditor. कुछ भी हुआ तो auditor को पकड़ो. So therefore, when we have proper documentations in place, we can safeguard our own interest. We can safeguard our own interest and thereby come clean from the penalties or prosecutions or even disciplinary action by the ICAI as a matter of fact. So this is what I wanted to share. Maybe if required, if anybody has or if anybody wants, I can share this with you if you don't have it already. So I think that's all from my side. I open the floor for questions and comments from the organizers, if any. Yeah, I think we are on time and we have enough time for Q&A. This is how I had planned it. Yeah, any questions from the participants? Happy to take it.
Members may please post their queries in the chat box.
No questions?
Sir, I think the session has been very well understood by all our members.
I hope so.
No, sir, definitely. The way you have explained and the file that you have shared, I think so members have already gone through it and they have understood it very well.
Okay. Okay, then over to you, Ritu madam and team.
Thank you, sir, for such a valuable session and knowledge sharing. Thank you for your time. For giving away formal vote of thanks, I request our convener, Ritu madam, to please give. I think so, sir, there is one query.
Yeah. What
Before
about
we-
non-corporate entities? ICDS compulsory? Yes, for non-corporate entities also. For tax audit is mandatory. The only exemption is for individual in HUF to whom tax audit is not applicable. Apart from that, even to corporate assessees or non-corporate assessees, ICDS is applicable. There is one more question from Rahul Sureka. Whether audit is compulsory if someone wants to show profit below 6% and total income is less than 1 crore. It is compulsory only if you have opted for presumptive taxation. If you have not opted for presumptive taxation, then audit is not mandatory. So 6% से कम है और आपने opt किया था for presumptive taxation, that is 44AD, only then tax audit is mandatory. If your turnover is say 95 lakhs and you have a loss situation and you have never opted for 44AD, in that case audit is not mandatory. Audit is not required. I hope that answers your question, Rahul Sureka ji. Yeah, I think we had two questions. I have answered both of them. Yeah.
Sheetal, please unmute yourself.
So there's one more question. FNO turnover of 36 lakh of individual and suffered loss. What about tax audit?
So FNO, you need to check the turnover for FNO is basically difference. Both the difference taken together, that is profit as well as loss. If it crosses 1 crore, then audit is required. If it does not cross 1 crore, then audit is not required. That is how you calculate the turnover for FNO. So in this case, if it is 36 lakhs, then audit may not be required. Yeah.
Members, any further questions? So there is another question from Rahul ji. Whether it is possible to show profit at 6% by opting 44AD, but actual profit is say more than 6%. Is it necessary to show 6% or more?
If your profit, actual profit is more than 6%, then you need to offer actual profit. There are various judicial precedents on this aspect also where courts have been held, where the courts have held that it is 6% or actual. Right. So if your actual is more, then you cannot offer just 6%. You have to offer actual profit only. For assessment year 21-22, limit is 10 crores, not 5 crores, provided the 5% condition is satisfied. The limit is 10 crores. Okay.
So let us keep this open for 2 minutes.
I am okay.
But maybe somebody will be
If
tired.
anybody wants to, maybe unmute themselves and ask the question rather than typing, I am okay with that also. You can raise your hand and unmute, and then.
Right.
Sheetal,
Yes, Ritu madam. You can.
as they say, feeling gratitude and not expressing it is wrapping a gift and not presenting it. So with this, thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful and informative session, sharing your insights, and also very thankful for taking our queries. Our members have a lot of takeaways from this session. Indeed, a very informative session. Sir, as a token of gratitude towards your efforts, we would like to present a receipt of CABF from Bhinder CP Study Circle in your name.
Thank you.
Just a second, sir. I am just sharing it. Sir, we will email this to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And with this, I thank you all for making this program resounding success. Members, we have another VCM tomorrow, 11 a.m. So see you at 11 tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the valuable session, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good day.
So we have one more query from Unmesh, sir. Can we answer that?
Yes, please.
Can we file Form 3CD for March 2020 if it is pending due to COVID pandemic?
So for March 2020, the due date for filing belated return is also, I think, expired. So therefore, I am afraid you may not be able to file this, because it is linked to the due date of filing of return of income. Now that due date is also gone. So therefore, you may not be able to file this now.
Very well, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for answering the query.
Thank
Thank you, sir, for being here with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir.